Yeah, okay, so I'm back. What happened? So on a island for many years, and they got so tired and weary of it all until one day, after some years, a bottle washed up on the floor, and a genie popped out and said, "Each one of you get one wish." And the first guy said, "Well, I miss my family so much. I just wish I was back in a grand family reunion back home." And poof, he disappeared and was having a great grand old time. And the second guy said, "I just miss golfing with my best buddies, and I just wish I were back every day playing 18 holes with my best friends on beautiful days." And poof, he was gone and just having a high old time out there. And then the third guy came up and he said, "I can't decide. I have no idea. I don't know what I want." And the genie said, "We don't have all day. Come on, give me something." He said, "I don't know. It's just so lonely on this island. I wish I had my two friends back." So which one of you wished for Pastor Frank to come back? Maybe Reverend Brian. Thank you, Brian, for the invitation. And I'm really excited to partner with you and help out a bit here at this church that I've grown to love. I want to talk to you in this first message I give about dealing with weariness in life. Anybody acquainted with that? You know, you wanted those kids and those grandkids, but doggone, they can be exhausting, can't they? You wanted to get into that school or at college, and you got there, and it's a way more work than you imagined it was going to be. Or you wanted that promotion and job, but man, you really spent by the end of this bigger than you thought it was going to be. Or you're getting older, and some of the stuff you got to deal with really gets old. It's all pretty exhausting. Well, how does our faith inform these kind of issues in life? It does. In the New Testament, the whole idea of weariness, they use that word a lot, is a spiritual issue. And it says you can all get kind of world weary out there, but don't let that tiredness, that bone tiredness at times, get into the heart and center of who you are. Don't let it into your spirit and soul, because it's risky if you do. It can take away your enthusiasm for just your life, the gift it is, or your passion for the callings that God has given you in your life, or just your enjoyment day to day of the gifts God puts there every day. And so, what are we to do about that? How does our faith help us? Well, the Apostle Paul today, and really throughout his writings, he acts like a coach. And it's like you've been born anew in your baptism, and you have this whole new life in Christ, the risen Lord, and all that. But now let me coach you in how to be new in the world. And so we heard in this message today he had, let us not grow weary of doing good. Sometimes it says, don't get weary of well-doing. And then it goes on to say, for in due season you will reap. And so don't what? Don't quit. Don't give up. Keep on. So for us to take that message, I think we have to diagnose things a little bit deeper and say, what is it really goes on that drains us? And I think, well, that should be 3 I'm going to give you. I gave 4 on Thursday, but things got really long. So 3. You'd agree, continuing challenges of life can wear a person down. When you got challenges, okay, we can do it for a couple of weeks and all that, but just keeps pressing you on and on and on. And it drags on the spirit, doesn't it? I mean, there's all sorts of things like that. If you're dealing with addictions, they're ongoing. Or if you're dealing with mental health in your family, it can really be exhausting for everybody. Or if you're dealing with chronic pain in your life, which many people have, like my friend Mike, when I pick him up in the morning for things, it's the same thing. I'm exhausted. And what is it? He's got post-polio and arthritis. And he's got to deal with it day in and day out. Or if you're walking through a time of real grief, you know, it can be like moving through molasses. It really can get old as it goes on and on. Well, Coach Apostle Paul shows up and he says, I want to invite you to think about it differently. You're not in a sprint, you're in a marathon. and prepare yourself for doing this faith marathon. And this is what he says. Would you read it with me? Keep running the race to receive the prize. He's just saying, keep on, step after step, and don't disqualify yourself and to the sidelines. Keep at it, because it's worth it. Keep your eyes on the prize. There are good things coming. There are rewards coming. There are blessings coming. There's help. There's restoration. There's peace. There's all these things that are coming. So don't give up your race of faith. Another one that I find very draining is, who likes conflict? But constant conflict is really something that saps the life out of us, I think. Who can say Washington, D.C.? Doesn't it just get old? Hang on you, all of that. Well, there's a lot of things, I think, that are like that. Some health issues and so forth, like we talked about, that can really get on your mind and get old after that. But you get family feuds going on sometimes, fighting at work or fighting with friends and stuff like that. It's draining on a person's spirit and life, isn't it? And then you got the bigger stuff in your calling to live out the new life. And that is, you keep fighting against poverty. Why isn't that dealt with by now? Or you're fighting against the injustices and unfairnesses that happen constantly in the world. Or you're fighting against hatred in people's hearts that keeps somehow rising up, or against gun violence, and just on and on. There are all these battles that we have, and we can get battle fatigue in our faith walk. So here comes Coach Apostle Paul. He's got something to tell us. He says, fight the good fight of faith. Actually, the Greek would be keep fighting, like keep running, keep fighting the good fight of faith. And then he gives you the help you're going to get. So take hold of the life that really is life, the life that really lasts, the life that is God's life, that Jesus won for us. Hang on to that. That's your own resources are going to run down, but you take this resource, the presence of the living Christ, it never wanes. And so encourages us faithfully to do that. And then you have times where this crisis comes, and it just can be cruel and destroy your normal routines and defenses and ways of handling the pressures of life. And the thing is, you didn't see it coming. That's a crisis. Bam! It just slams you. And suddenly, you're in a whole new planet and trying to figure out how to cope and get this through this sort of time. So last Sunday, we had a dear friend, Gwen Saylor, who, after a retreat with her classmates, my wife Jan is one of the deaconesses with her, and they get together every year. And they had a wonderful time, and then she stayed overnight at our house Sunday night. She's the distinguished professor of biblical literature in Hebrew and Greek at Wartburg Theological Seminary. A just really smart lady, but so much fun, silly and goofy, and we just had a great time Sunday night. We watched the Packers win, and we just enjoyed that so much, and we're laughing and had a great meal together and all that. This morning she rose up early and got herself going back to Dubuque, Iowa, where the seminary is. She never made it. Unbelievable. She stopped for a cup of coffee at a McDonald's about 45 minutes outside of Dubuque. People saw her wobbling to her car, and they thought she was drunk, some of them, or on something, or needed help, and they called 911. She got into her car. She never even swung her legs into the car. She slumped over the steering wheel, and Gwen was gone. Holy guacamole. Dead. We were stunned, dismayed. And her whole diaconate community in shock and in disarray. The whole seminary community in disarray. How can this be? It's impossible. She was in such great shape. And yesterday they had just a wonderful celebration of Gwen's life at the seminary. I was able to go for that. And all her sisters are there, from the diaconate, and all of her faculty, and so many students. There was just people standing all in the back. It was like Easter Sunday. All there to give testimony to the light that shined through Gwen. But also to claim their hurt and their pain. And we need each other. We need that life that can support one another. We're not going to find it anywhere else than in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, again, the coach shows up, and maybe read this one with me. Our dangers teach us to rely not on ourselves, but on the God of the resurrection, who rescues in deadly peril and who rescue again. So in the gospel, we heard Jesus talking about these end-time things, not by end-of-life things, but it's really end-of-the-world things. And it's a strange literature. Sometimes people mistakenly try to press the details and figure out how things will end at the end of the time. That's not what it's about. In this ancient literature, apocalyptic literature was to get your attention, so it exaggerated all the disasters of life. And then it had a good point. And the point was this: the world is about to turn. And so when Jesus is talking this way, he said, it may look like evil is embedded in some of the structures of society and the world and intractable, but guess what? There's a higher God that is coming and has come into the world. And he's come in the person of Jesus Christ, in his life, his death, his resurrection, his ascension into heaven, his rule over all things. The world is about to turn. His kingdom has arrived. It's here. It's peaceable. It's full of love. And good will triumph over evil. And our lives here might be momentary, but our lives in him are forever and forevermore. This is the great gospel of Jesus Christ. We need to constantly keep up and tell ourselves the world is about to turn when we're going through rough stuff. And it's going to turn for our good and for our life. Now, this church has great missions, and one of them is to the mentally ill, another form of disease. And today you're going to hear more about that right now from Terry, who's going to come forward wherever she is, and tell us about what it is you're doing in that arena. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Pastor Frank. Alison Pataki, in her memoir, Beauty in the Broken Places, writes how lucky we are, not because life is easy or smooth or because it makes sense or because we are in control. Life is hard and scary and entirely out of control. We cannot tell what tomorrow brings or even what the next hour brings. We are lucky to be living this life. The Bible says, in the beginning God created, and it was good. Then God made a covenant that he would dwell among us. He sent Jesus for our reconciliation, not to take away the hardships, but to take away our sin, that eternal separation from God. And he established a new covenant to walk with us. He instructed us in John 15:12 to love one another. I interpret this as to include to care and support one another. Our St. John Stewardship Initiative is called Together Moving God's Mission Forward. And I know you guys have all heard about this. As part of that initiative, St. John's has formed a committee to explore mental health or mental wellness and our collective response to the wellness needs. So first I want you to think about your physical health and where does that fall on a scale of 1 to 10? It depends, you say, and you are correct. It depends on the year, on the month, on the day, or sometimes if you're like me, on the hour because you ate the wrong thing. Our health ebbs and flows on that scale, and it becomes a significant problem when it stays too long at that low end, or it doesn't recover like it should. The same is true with our spiritual health. It ebbs and flows from year to year, and by month, or even day to day. Time with the Bible, time with God, time with God's community, life gets hectic and we can drift. It becomes significant when we stop engaging with God or God's community. So when we talk about mental health or mental wellness, we can also think about that scale of 1 to 10. Most of us can recognize that we ebb and flow on that scale as well. We have all had some sort of trauma or loss or grief or struggles. On any given day, year, month, we can find ourselves moving up and down that scale. Again, mental wellness becomes significant concern when we get stuck at the bottom of that scale, or it overwhelms our ability to function in our daily lives. The good news is we are resilient people. My personal 1 to 10 story started about 6 years ago and lasted about 4 years when my mother's health began to deteriorate. Hospital, rehab, back to the hospital, back to rehab, sleeping at her place while attempting to get her care, making sure her care was quality, paperwork for financial support, meeting with doctors, nurses, social workers, fighting for quality of life. Many of you have traveled this road. There are times between work and caregiving and caring for a house and all that other stuff that I felt I couldn't do it anymore. I'm not going to make it. I found support and strength and encouragement from my St. John's Bible study group and from my St. John's book club, from my family, my friends, my neighbors. God worked through them. After my mom crossed over on her journey, my St. John's community and my family and friends support, they continued, and I, in turn, was able to do the same for some of them. God gave us each other. And he also gave us people who specialize in specific areas of support. Our job as a Christian community is not to replace these special people, but to think about these things. How can we support one another as we all experience the ebbs and flows? How can we support those among us whose children or parents or spouses or friends are struggling with being stuck at that low end of the scale? And how can we show our hospitality of welcome and inclusion for those who are stuck at that low end of the scale for right now? St. John's will be promoting an all-book study in January. Our book is going to be called Grace for the Afflicted by Matthew Stafford. We'll spend 6 weeks reading, learning, and discussing this book in small groups. In February, we'll have a special dinner and an opportunity to celebrate our growing together. Also then, that day after, that Saturday, which is February 22nd, we'll have a workshop that we're hosting or sponsoring, put on by NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Illness. They're going to teach us factual information about mental health and give us some personal stories. And then that following Sunday, we will have a resource fair where you can get different resources for your own health, but also for to recommend to other people. So I'm closing with another quote from Alison Pataki. She writes at the end of her book, "There are still so many good moments to be had. We choose today a life full of love and loved ones, a life full of gratitude for both beauty and the brokenness, to a deeper faith and a more meaningful appreciation for every single day we are given, acknowledgement for our blessings, and a genuine compassion for those who are struggling. We choose that." St. John's family, let us all say, we choose that. Amen.
We choose that. Thank you, Terry. So God has given us these wonderful resources, and together we tend to them. Stewardship is the time we're in as a congregation. And so we've been given this gift, body, mind, and spirit. And the coach, St. Paul, said, "May the Lord bless you wholly, fully, body, mind, and spirit." And that blessing tells us it's all interrelated. So our part is to be wise managers of our temple, of our bodies, physically, and also to be tending to our minds so that we don't let all that negativity out there come in too deeply. Instead, encourage to think of the great, noble, good, beautiful, wonderful gifts of our God day in and day out. And then our spirit is what we're doing here, right now, feeding our souls. When we do that, God gives us His promise. God gives strength to the weak. Those who hope in the Lord will what? Renew their strength. They will rise up as if on eagle's wings. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. Jesus says, come to me, all you that are weary. I will give you rest. Can I hear an amen?
Amen.